Hi, welcome to another edition of the Everlast Power video series. In this edition, we're going to cover the storage and keeping of welding rods. Now, we're specifically dealing with stick welding rods today, but some of the applications can go for TIG welding rods as well. One of the problems with long-term storage of welding rods is the fact that they absorb moisture, and this is in the stick welding rod category. One of the goals of storing welding rods is to prevent moisture ingress. And this is particularly important with welding rods that are classified as low hydrogen. Now, a low hydrogen rod is something like a 7018, a 8018, a 118. These are low hydrogen category rods. And what that means is that these are particularly low in moisture content. Now, moisture in a welding rod can cause hydrogen cracking or an underbead cracking during the weld. Now, this is part of what they call hydrogen embrittlement, but whenever the moisture in the rod is heated through an electrical arc, you release hydrogen. Whenever you get hydrogen into a weld, you can cause underbead cracking, and it won't show up at the surface, but if you take a radiological exam of the weld, you're going to find that right where the weld metal was deposited, there's going to be a long, narrow crack where the hydrogen is embedded in the metal. Now, when you buy welding rods, they come in several different kinds of packages. And what we want to discuss are the problems that are presented with the packaging and how we can long-term store these products. The way that you can buy welding rods that you're going to commonly find if you go in some place like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something, you're going to find welding rods packaged in a paper box like this. And we're going to discuss this a bit more in a minute. Now, for most customers, I recommend not buying into little 1 pound plastic packaging. Actually, a lot of times it's in a clear plastic sliding package because it's not a very economical way to buy. So I typically recommend buying in a minimum of a 5 pound package. Now, if you go into a welding supply store or something, this is the way it's going to be packaged. Typically, if you buy in a 5 pound, it's going to be in a plastic container, usually with a piece of tape or seal something here. You can see all these are used except for this canister here. But if you have a 5 pound package, that's a good size to start out with. Typically, it's going to last you a while. Now, if you buy a 6010 or 6011, shelf life on something like this, I wouldn't put it past 6 months. Now, these aren't low hydrogen, so storage is not quite as critical, but in a minute we're going to discuss that you do need to take care of these, and I'm going to show you why. Now, a 10 pound package is economical to buy, and I recommend that you take a look at buying a 10 pound package minimum when you can. The 5 pounds are great, but a 10 pound is a good starting size because this will handle several welding projects and you won't be constantly running back and forth to the store. If you buy in a 1 pound package, well, typically you're going to run through those pretty quick, especially if you're using a 1/8 size or larger. Now, here's another type packaging that we have. This is actually a sealed canister. Now, this is, if you're a professional welder, this is really the only acceptable way to buy most electrodes, especially any low hydrogen electrodes. Now, you can buy low hydrogen in these type packages here, but when you buy them like this, it means that the moisture is already present and the low hydrogen effect has been deleted. Now, you can rebake those rods at a high temperature of 500 degrees or more for several hours, and they'll be considered low hydrogen again, but it usually destroys the texture of the flux. Now, if you have a rod oven, well, that's not going to be too big a problem rebaking those things. But a rod oven is not only designed to rebake, they're also designed to hold at a certain temperature, say 150 degrees to 200 degrees, depending on what the welding rod is. Now, that seems kind of high, and it's like having a toaster oven on low all the time. Now, a rod oven can add a good bit to your power bill each month, so it's sort of an energy vampire, and I don't really recommend that for the average homeowner. Now, if you have a small shop or something, it's probably going to be a must for you. But whenever you open one of these cans up, you typically only have about 4 to 8 hours before you have to dispose of these things on a code type work job. Now, if I'm welding in my shop or someplace out on the field or something, you can get a portable rod oven. But typically, if you're a long way from where you're welding and stuff, you don't want to be walking back and forth with those 7018s hot all the time. So, you know, there's a good alternative to a 7018 for general fab work. In fact, this is called a fab rod, and it's a 7014. That's what I have here. Now, 7014 is a good rod. It's not considered low hydrogen, doesn't have the storage requirements. It holds up for a long time, and it welds very similar to a 7018. It doesn't weld quite as good, but it puts down a lot of metal very fast. Even if you're using something like a 6011 or a 6010, this is a nice way to store it, but it's not going to be the best or long-term solution. Let me show you right now. This is kind of a box that I've neglected here for a few months in humid condition. Let me show you a couple of things. This is a 6010 5P from Lincoln. It's a great rod. It's a little 3/32 rod, but I don't know if it shows up on the video or not, but they tend to start turning chalky after they've been exposed to too much moisture, too much air. And even on the end, I'm getting a little rust. And that's a sign that these rods probably have seen a little bit too much moisture themselves. Now, people have all kinds of remedies for this. They actually will soak these in water. You know what? I don't believe in all that, although it probably does work. If I'm going to do this, there are better ways to store it than in the box, which I have left this box out. It was under a table and I didn't even know it was there, and I found it recently. Better yet, you know, if you keep them in a box like this, these are 6011s, they stay in much better condition. Now what I have here is a good way to store rods short term, and for some rods even a long term. But if you're running a 7018, this is a good way to keep them if they come out of a rod oven for a little bit. This is a good way to keep rods like a 6010 or a 6011, 6013, 7014, any of those non-low hydrogen rods. This is a good way to store them long term. It's not very expensive. These things are $5 to $10 a piece, depending on the type, the brand, the style. But I do like these because they're easy to pack away and go anywhere, and they hold about 5 to 10 pounds worth of welding rods. Now this is not a code type process, what I'm going to show you here, but this is a good way, sort of a seat of the pants way to preserve your welding rods. Now I've laid out about a pound here of 6010s that we had showed you earlier with the chalkiness and everything. We're going to use these to demonstrate on. But this is a good way to take a 10-pound can and divide it into 1-pound packages. What I have here is a vacuum sealer, typical of what you would use to store your meat or vegetables or something long-term in the freezer. Now these sealers have a hot surface right here that you just put in here, and you can close it down and just press and hold the seal against it right here. You make sure it locks, and every one is a little bit different, but I'm just going to hit the seal and it's going to heat this up right now. Now what we have a seal on the bottom of the bag right here. It's been heat sealed, so we know we got a good seal on the bottom. And like I said, we've cut these a little bit longer than a welding rod, and you need a couple of inches longer. And we're just going to drop these in a bag like this. We're going to do it carefully so we don't poke a hole in it. But we're going to take it again, and what we're going to do, we're going to seal this bag up right here. Now we got to slide this up underneath this. Now this is different on every one, and this is probably not the easiest one to use, but it's a good sample, and it's great to demonstrate with. Once again, we'll just do this, and we'll hit the vacuum. You can see it sucking the air out right here. We got a good seal. Now I'm going to hit the seal right here. It'll kick out in just a second. Alright, the seal light went off, and we got a good seal. And what we've just done is preserve these welding rods for the future. Now, there's not going to be any moisture coming in. This is vacuum sealed. It's tight. It's better than a Ziploc bag for sure. One thing about this is that when it seals it down, it pulls the humid air out, and it can even possibly pull some of the moisture out while you're doing this. Now, this isn't a code process, but if you're a homeowner, this is a good way to buy a large quantity of rods, then store them indefinitely if you need to. We've furthered your understanding a little bit about how to store and keep welding rods, the different types, and the problems associated with it. Now, if you have any more questions about the Everlast product or the Everlast company in general, give us a call at the number listed at the end of the video. And we appreciate you watching.